Welcome to this hands-on class where we will clean and analyze real-world sales data using Power Query, XLOOKUP, and pivot tables. This walkthrough will sharpen your ability to transform messy data into trusted insights. Imagine you're working for a multinational retail chain with operations across many countries. Every day, thousands of sales transactions pour in from different point of sale systems. But there's a challenge. The raw data is not ready for reporting because it contains duplicate transactions from POS failures. Now, let's look at if we have duplicate transactions, really. Okay, we highlight transactions. In our home tab, we go to Styles Group in a ribbon, then click on Conditional Formatting, click on New Rule, then select Format Only Unique or Duplicate Values. Let's leave it at Duplicate Values. If ever you want unique values, you can click the drop down to select Unique Values, but let's leave it at Duplicate Values because that is what we want. Let's pick our format so that we can visually see the duplicates that we have. Let's pick this red, okay? And click OK, then click OK. You can see now it's picked our duplicate values. The reason we are selecting duplicates in this transaction ID alone is that the transaction ID is enough information to tell us if there is a duplicate transaction. Duplicates in your data set mean that you have a complete row of similar information, okay? Let us check to see that truly these were actually duplicates across the columns. Still highlighted here in our home tab, we go to the editing group, click the drop down on sort and filter, and let's add a filter. So if we do this, we can click the drop down and let's select our first duplicate that was marked, click OK, and you see that these are actually duplicates, the same time, the same name, the same product, the same quantity, the same unit price, the same information across. So this is indeed a duplicate. Let us clear this filter. I think we have seen what we are looking for. And we'll also clear this conditional formatting because we have determined that we truly have duplicates, okay? So let's clear rule and clear rule from selected cells, these cells we selected. In this data set, we also have missing store IDs. These missing store IDs can break our sales traceability, right? You can see the store IDs here. We have some missing store IDs. And to look at how far our store ID is missing, let's add a filter here. In the home tab, go to editing group again, click the drop down. Let's add a filter here and the store ID here, okay? So we'll click the drop down on that filter and let's deselect all and select only blanks. Blanks represent missing values. So click OK. We see the store IDs that are missing, okay? We have actually determined that we actually have missing store IDs here. So let's clear this filter and in fact, remove this from here, okay? So the third is that we have mismatched currencies. You can see in the currency column that we have mismatched currencies. So we'll have to normalize this because this makes it impossible to compare numbers directly, okay? Because you cannot actually calculate the total sales right now because you have them in different currencies. So we will have to convert those currencies to at least a single currency that we can work with. So if we report this data without cleaning, we might overstate revenue because of the duplicate transactions, right? We may also miss important patterns and make poor business decisions. So going ahead with this data set for analysis will not be appropriate, okay? As data analyst, it is your job to spot these inconsistencies early, clean them up, and build a solid data set for reporting. That is why this class will guide you through step by step with clear explanations along the way. So here is what you learn. You will learn how to detect and remove duplicate transactions. You will learn how to handle missing IDs or store IDs using lookup techniques. You will also learn how to standardize currency using Power Query merges. And finally, how to analyze clean data with pivot tables. You will also learn documentation best practices like building a data dictionary. let's get started. So now that we have seen the problems in our sales data, it is time to begin the cleanup using Power Query. And we'll be using Power Query now in Excel. Power Query is a powerful data transformation tool. So the first step is to load our data into Power Query. This is where all the cleaning magic will happen. Let us load this data into Power Query. And this is our sales data, right? Okay, so we'll click anywhere within the data set, all right? Let's go to our data tab on the ribbon. Then, because we have it in a spreadsheet open, we will just say from table or range. So you click on from table or range. What happens next is that it wraps your data and first creates a table, then loads that table into Power Query. So what happens here is that as it creates this table, make sure you check my table has headers, okay? Make sure this is checked. If this is not checked, it's going to bring up this, right, as part of your data. It's going to bring up this first row as part of your data, and that is not what we want. Let's go ahead and click OK. But before you click OK, make sure that your range, right, you can see these dotted lines going across, is wrapping your entire data set. Make sure your range is correct. This range says from A1, which is this first cell here, to K121, which is the last cell in the K column, okay? You can scroll down and see that K121. So Excel automatically wraps this correctly, but in case it's not correct, you can always adjust it. So let me explain what this dollar sign means. This dollar sign represents absolute references, okay? The dollar sign before the column name represents an absolute reference column. The dollar sign before the row name represents an absolute row reference. So let's go ahead and click OK. When we click OK, it then loads, creates a connection in Power Query, and open the Power Query editor. So we have our data set here, the sales data in Power Query. All right, so with our data loaded, the next thing we would like to do is to change the name of our query, right? So on the right-hand panel under query settings here, you can see the name of this, it's table 2, right? So for best practices, we have to rename it, okay? Let's rename it into something like, say, sales data raw. All right, it's essential for documentation, traceability, and collaboration. It's a small but professional habit, right, to save your queries like this, okay? So you save it with something with a name that is traceable, that will enhance collaboration, right? You know that most of the time you're not the only one working on the data set. So you have to, if your job is to clean the data set, you have to clean it in such a way that you can easily document your cleaning process. So the following step is for us to validate and set column data types. This is a very critical step, okay? Let's look at the transaction ID. The transaction ID is meant to be text and should be text, okay? The first indication is that you will see this ABC beside the your column name. You'll see this ABC beside the column name, okay? This represents text. Secondly, you can look at that from the transform group here. You see the data type is text. You can also see that in the transform tab here, under any column, the data type is text, okay? Those are 3 ways you can quickly look at the data type. So let's look at the dates currently. The date currently is not determined. You see on the date, the data type is saying any, right? So that is to say that it doesn't recognize it as a date. With a timestamp on this date, you can just pick maybe date time, right? This converts it to date time. You can see now, right? See the difference here. Then it was ABC123 indicating any, right? But now you can see the time and the calendar. But we want this column to be dates, okay? So click on the data type and select just dates. We can add this to new step, okay? This new step will be added to our applied step. So if we add this new step, you see that we changed that. So for traceability, you can always rename your applied step. You click on the apply step and say rename. you can then write, say, change to dates. So in that apply step, everyone looking at it will know that you changed this data column to dates data type. Our customer name is set to any. Let's make sure we set that to text. Our product is also set to any. Let's set that to text, okay? Our quantity is also set to any. You can also set the data type by clicking here and just pick, let's say, whole number, okay? So you've corrected that. Then our unit price is also set to any. Let's set that to whole number as well. Our currency, let's set that to text. All right. Total amounts, let's make that whole number. Store ID, we will make it text. Sales rep text as well. Region, let's rename region to location. And we rename by double clicking on the column name, and we'll change that to location. Okay, we'll rename that location. Let's change the data type of location to text. So on this apply step, you can say renamed, instead of rename column, let's call it renamed region location. Okay, so renamed region to location. Then we change location to text data type. So we are naming our applied step so that it will be easy for us to trace. So we have ensured that our data set have the appropriate data type. So always validate column data type as soon as you load your data. Excel and Power Query try to guess them, but often get it wrong. And trust me, wrong data types can cause serious errors later, especially with calculations or date filters. For example, here, you see that we changed the total amount here. Okay, it was on any value initially. So we changed it to whole number. So if this was accidentally changed to text, for instance, now by Excel or Power Query, aggregating or summing it in pivot tables won't work. It won't work because in pivot table values, what will happen is that it will count text instead of summing it. Okay, for text, it counts. When we take whole numbers into the value area, it sums. So that is why aggregating text wouldn't work, or aggregating total amount set to text wouldn't work, okay? If date is stored as plain text, sorting by time or filtering by months will fail, okay? Because it doesn't understand it as dates. All right, we've now safely loaded our messy sales data into Power Query, named the query clearly. We have also locked in the correct data type, one of the most important quality checks at this stage. Next, we'll begin by solving actual data problems, starting with removing duplicate transactions from POS failures. Let's tackle one of the most critical data issues, duplicate transaction. In our case, these are likely caused by POS system glitches, where the same transaction is recorded more than once. And this is important. You should never delete duplicates blindly. We need to investigate and confirm them first, just as we did initially, okay? We can also confirm them here in Power Query as well. In our Home tab, under Transform Group, let's click on Group By, okay? So we want to group our transaction ID, right? And the operations will be to count rows, okay? You can see we have several operations here, but what we want in this case is to count rows, okay? The new column name, you could as well give it any column name you want by removing this, but let's go with counts, okay? So if we click OK, you can see that we have a column count that counts the number of times our transactions occurred. So remember, we use counts and it counted the number of times our transaction ID, which are text data type, appeared. So you can see that we have duplicate transactions or transaction appearing more than once. We have them here, 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 right? And so on. You can see here and here as well. Okay. So now we have actually confirmed that we have duplicates, right? We do have duplicates. Okay. So what we need to do now is to do what? Is to remove our duplicates. Let us go back to our data set, okay, that we've confirmed that there's duplicate, okay? So we can take this out. We have confirmed that we have duplicates already. So now let's click anywhere, say Control A to highlight the entire data set. And then in our home tab here, under reduce rows, let's click a drop down on remove rows and then say remove duplicates. When we click on remove duplicates, we have truly now removed our duplicates. And if we ever go back to those values that had duplicates, you will see that we do not have any duplicates. And if you want to test this really, you can do the group by again to see if you truly have duplicates. Let's try that. On the home tab, let's go to our transform group and click on group by. We want to group by transaction ID. We want it to count rows and we want the new column to be count. Let's click OK. If you click OK now, you see that we have actually done what? Removed our duplicates. We don't have any duplicates existing again. We can close that or delete that step. So we now can load our data set that have unique transaction IDs and unique data into our data model or into Excel as a table. Let's rename this remove duplicates. Okay, we'll right click and say rename, removed POS duplicates. Hit enter. Then let's go to our home tab, click a drop down and say close and load. So for now, we need to do the currency standardization, right? This is the next step. If you look at our currency column, we have not dealt with that issue yet. So we need to standardize this currency, okay? So in this section, we'll standardize currency values so that we can meaningfully compare sales across different locations or different countries. So right now, our sales data mixes values in USD, Euro, Nigerian Naira, and so on. So we can't sum or analyze them properly unless they are all in a single base currency. Let's see a step-by-step guide on how to prepare the exchange rate table. We already have this table here, which is our currency rates, which mirrors currency rates to the Nigerian Naira. But instead of hard coding these values inside formula, we'll use the left outer join in Power Query to merge them. This makes updates and validation much easier. So let's load this table now into Power Query, okay? So click anywhere as we did initially for the sales data. Let's go to our data tab and say from table or range, right? And make sure that you check my table has headers, okay? Click on OK. And then we are in Power Query. Now, let's make sure that our currency column is in the text data type, right? Is correct. And our rate to Naira is in the whole number data type, which we have it correct here. So always check your column type. The join won't work if one is text and the other is numeric, so it won't work, okay? So you know that we have an existing connection with our sales data raw, our first table, right? And this other connection, which is rates to Naira. Remember, we changed our sales data to sales data raw here. So we could change this as well, okay? Let's change this. Let's call this exchange rate. So let us merge our queries, all right? So under the home tab, right, let's go to combine group. Click a drop down on merge queries and select merge queries as new. Let's select our sales data raw as our primary table and select our exchange rate as the secondary table. On the join kind, let's pick left outer join. So the left outer join means we'll keep all rows from our sales data, even if there's no matching exchange rate. This is safer than an inner join. It ensures we don't accidentally lose transactions just because we are missing a rate. So let us now match on currency. Let's match our two tables on currency. So I'm going to click on currency on this table, right? And select a matching column here on the second table. And now you can see it says the selection matches 110 of 110 rows from the first table. And that is why we had to use our sales data row as our primary table. Okay. Now we can go ahead and click OK. Let's inspect the merged output. In the new merged query, let's go to the new merged query. You can see we have the exchange rate. Let's expand the rates, okay? You click on this icon here, all right? So our goal is to expand, okay? Let's uncheck use original column name as prefix and rename the query sales with rates, all right? So let's look at this again. Let's expand this now and see, click on OK. So you see that in that expanded query, we have euro matching euro currency. And here we have the Nigerian naira matching the Nigerian naira. So we basically can inspect and see that we actually have our merged query corresponding with the sales data. Now, each row in our data set has a corresponding exchange rate for each currency. That is if available, if we don't have any that is missing. Let us check for missing rates. This is an auditing step, right? Or an audit step. So we can add a new column. To add a new column, let's go to add column and click on add custom column. Let's call this column missing rate flag. All right, let's enter the following formula. We'll say if we want to say if our new currency is null, then open and close quotes, missing rates, else. Now, what we are saying here is that if we have a missing currency here, that is what we mean by is null, then let it return in this new column that we have a missing rate. If not so, that is what else means. Let it return OK. If we click OK now, but before we click OK, when you are entering your formula in Power Query, always check here to see that there are no errors detected in your syntax, okay? Then let's click OK now. When we click OK, we see that we have a new column called missing rate flag. That is the column we entered, right? And everywhere we have OK. So if you have a large data set and you can't just scroll across, what you do is that just click on the filter. If you have missing rate, as we say, the null value should be, you are going to see missing rate. But now everything is okay for us, and hence we have just okay. This is a best practice. Before using exchange rate, always check for missing matches, okay? This helps us catch any new or misspelled currency, like let's say if we misspelled euro, it will help us catch that. Let us create Naira equivalent column. If you look at here, where we have our total amount, this currency is in euro, right? We have the one in Naira. So that is what informed our sales with rate table, right? Where we had the rate to Naira, you can see it matching very well. The euro, the rate to Naira here, as we have it in this class, is 1,650, right? Naira is 1, okay? If we wanted to convert this to USD, we will have had different rates. But now our goal is to convert everything or to normalize every currency to Naira, okay? You can see here for USD is 1.5 here, right? If we convert this to Naira, it will make a whole lot of sense based on what our currency rate table is, okay? So let's add that column. Let's click on add column and we'll click on add custom column. On the custom column here, we will say sales amounts in Naira. Let's insert the following formula. You remember what I showed us? We want to multiply our total amount. So double click to enter in your formula. We want to multiply it by our rate to Naira. You can see the rate to Naira column we merged. So we'll double click to enter. Let's go ahead and click OK. We'll have that new column. Okay. Now we have created a standardized currency column. All values have been converted into Naira. This is what we'll use in our analysis moving forward. You could remove the original currency and sales value. That is, you can go ahead and remove this currency and total sales amount. So they are optional. You can still load them and don't use these columns anyway. You know the columns you will use, right? Remember that we always renamed that. So you can always remember to rename your steps to make collaboration easy. So we added sales amounts here. Okay, we added sales amounts in Naira here. All right. We have now finished one of the most powerful transformation, converting global sales into a single currency safely and traceably. So let us go ahead and load this. Let's go to home, close and load. So let's just close and load to have it on our workbook. You can see the difference here now is this. We have a sales amount in Naira column that we can use. We have a standardized currency. Okay, this is different now from our sales data raw. Remember, our sales data raw, we didn't have that. We just gradually did some level of cleanups just to make the class easy for you to trace your steps. So let's move this sales with rates table close to sales data raw. So we have sales with rates. The sales with rates is the most updated sales data raw table. Okay, let us deal with missing store IDs. So roughly 12% of our transactions are missing store ID. This breaks reporting, especially when grouping sales by branch. Our goal is to recover store IDs using the location column, either inside Power Query or internally here in Excel using XLOOKUP. Let's start with the first option. So the first option will be us using Power Query method. So we already have a table here that we created as store lookup. Okay, so we created store lookup with matching store IDs. So we will use this table as a store map. We already have our sales with rates table in Power Query. We will just go ahead and load our store lookup table that is going to serve as our store map into Power Query. And we'll do that as we did the other two tables. Go to data, click from table range, then we go ahead and click OK. So we are in Power Query now. So to ensure that we have a matching column, remember we changed region initially to location. So we ought to rename this to location as well. So let's double click and name this location in this table. Let's rename this table as store map lookup. Hit enter. Because we want to merge the queries and we want to make the sales with rates as table 1 in the merge queries. So you can see all the queries that we have created during this class, right? So let's click on sales with rates to swap to that sales with rates table, okay? From here, let's go to home. Then under combine, click on merge queries, okay? You see it automatically picked this table as the table 1. Let us go and pick store map lookup as the table 2, and we will be using the left outer join on the join kind. So it's already on left outer join, okay? Now we have to indicate what we'll be joining, and we'll be joining on our location. So this is location, and we'll also join location. Now, it said the selection matches 65 of 110 rows from the first table. So let's go ahead and click on OK. As we've clicked on OK now, we've had our store map lookup here in our sales with rates table. So let us expand the store map lookup. Okay, let's click to expand it here. So we want to select only store ID. See, I had to click select all columns to uncheck it and then say only store ID. I selected only store ID. So I'll rename as mapped store ID. So let me rename this as mapped store ID. Okay, hit enter. All right, now we have mapped it and we have some nulls or some null values. So let us replace missing store IDs with the mapped ones, okay? We will add a column. Let's go to add column. Click on custom column to add that column. So we want to call this custom column final store ID. We'll say if store ID is null. Let's pick store ID. Double click to enter in a formula. So if store ID is null, then let us pick our mapped store ID. Else, we'll leave it as store ID. So what we are saying is that we want to create a new column. A column where we won't have any missing IDs or any missing store IDs. So we are now using the two columns that we had. The column we had originally, which is the store ID, and our merged column, which is the mapped, which we renamed as the mapped store ID. So we are saying in this new column that we call final store ID, where store ID is null, use mapped store ID. Where is not, use the store ID. So we do not have any syntax error. We click OK to have our final store ID. So as you can see, in our final store ID, we still have some nulls repeating, okay? So let us see how we can deal with that further. Let us enter another column, click to add column, and let's just use this formula instead. So we are going to leave it as custom and rename it when we are done with this, okay? Let's try this. So we'll say if store ID equals null, then map store ID, else store ID. So what we are saying is that now remember we are using this to indicate an empty string. And why we are using it to indicate an empty string is because remember our store ID is a text value. So let's go ahead and click OK and see if we have that. So we have done this too. Here using is null, and here we use equals empty string, and we are still getting the same issues here. Let us see why we are having these issues, okay? Now, the first challenge could be a mismatch location value, because even a tiny difference, let's say extra space, different case, or hidden characters between the location values in cells with rates table as well as store map lookup will break the match. So let's do this fix. So we are going to add a trim and clean step on both tables before merging. So let us delete these steps and do those fixes before we merge. All right, so we are back here. In the sales rates table here in Power Query, let's select the location column. We'll go to transform. On that text column here, let's click format, and then we click on trim. Okay, so we have trimmed that text in the location column. We'll repeat the same process, only this time we are going to pick clean. So transform tab, on that text column, click the drop down on format and let's clean. Okay, so we have trimmed the text on the location column, cleaned the text on the location column. And if you look clearly, you are going to see some issues here. You see here, we have Lagos. We also have Lagos here and Lagos here, okay? You can see we have some issues here. Those were the issues that made matching impossible, okay? Apart from the trimmed and clean, okay? So you can click the drop down on this location column to see the issues you have, okay? These issues are issues you can find or come across when cleaning your data, and it can make your formulas not to work. So that is why I did that, so that you see how it looks like when your data are not entered appropriately. So some level of cleaning will not even work. So let's clean them properly before we go ahead to merge them. So here you see we have Lagos, which is appropriate, and now we have Lagos. So here we have ABJ and Abuja. So we have to ensure that we make sure ABJ is Abuja or Abuja is ABJ, however we want to do it. And Lagos is Lagos, right? Let's make sure we have those there. Now we have seen the issues here in these sales with rates location. Let us use replace values to make sure we can replace those, okay? Highlight the location value. Let's go to transform tab under any column. Let's replace values, okay? Now we want to find Lagos. We already saw that we had Lagos, something like this. We want to replace it with the correct Lagos, okay? We can go ahead and click OK. We have replaced that. And if you click the drop down, you can see that we only have one Lagos now. So let's do the same thing for Abuja and ABJ, okay? So we still leave the location column highlighted, go to transform, click on replace values. And now let's look for ABJ, right? And replace it with Abuja, okay? If we click OK, what we have done is that we have replaced that. If we click the drop down, you see now we have Abuja, Enugu, Kaduna, Lagos, and Port Harcourt. We click OK. Now we have done this successfully here in our sales rate table. Let's look at our store map lookup, right? Let's look at this and see if we have the same thing. So you see we have Lagos is correctly spelled, Abuja here, Port Harcourt, Enugu, Kaduna. So you see that even while we trim and clean, we also need to make sure that we have the same values. But come here again. Look at Port Harcourt in the store map location. Come to sales with rates and look at Port Harcourt in the location column. You'll see that they aren't the same. This is the Port Harcourt spelling here, and that is Port Harcourt in the store map, okay? So let us make sure that we have the same thing. I could just, let me copy this, okay? So that I will make sure it's the same. So in the location column here in the sales with rates, I am going to replace this Port Harcourt with the Port Harcourt in the store map table, okay? Here we have Port Harcourt. We want to replace it with this, click OK, and we have replaced that successfully. So now let's go to store map table and highlight this location. Let us clean and trim as we did the other. So we'll click on transform. We'll go to text column here, then on format, we want to trim. We have trimmed. Then we repeat the process again because we want to remove every space or every special character hidden there. So we have done that. So now we can go on with our merge. So let's go to our sales with rates table, go to our home tab under combine. Let us merge queries. Okay, and we want to merge queries with store map lookup. That want to merge our sales with rates and our store map lookup. So we want a left outer join, selected here already, a left outer join. We want to merge the location here with the location here. Okay, now you see that we have the selection matches 110 of 110 rows from the first table. Initially, what was it? Remember, it was 65 of 110, right? So you can see this is what we are trying to show you, okay? So now you see that we are correct and we can go along well. So here, let us expand this. Let us just pick only store ID, okay? And click OK, because initially we had the whole table, right? You can see that this lookup solved the store ID that was missing here. And you see that the store ID for Port Harcourt is ST003, isn't it? So let's see if this was right. So we have ST003 for Port Harcourt. So let us rename this column to mapped store ID, okay? Double click and we'll say mapped store ID. We hit enter and we have it there. So if we want now to continue with that formula we did initially to make sure that we add a column and we call that column our final store ID, where we replace the missing store IDs with the store IDs in the map store ID. So let's go ahead and do that. To do so, we'll go to add column, click on add custom column, okay? And we'll call this column now our final store ID. Now let's enter this formula using a conditional logic. We'll say if store ID, okay, is null, then let's use map store ID, else store ID. So this creates a new column. That new column is going to be filled where it's null with the content of map store ID. If we click on OK, we will have the final store ID where we are going to have everything filled. So here we don't have null anymore. We have ST001 to ST005, indicating our full store IDs. Remember I said we can do this two ways. This is the best way in Power Query. So the other way, you can use XLOOKUP in your Excel worksheet. So let me explain how you will use XLOOKUP to solve the missing store ID problem. Let us duplicate our raw data, which is the sales data. So I'm going to right click on the sheet name and I'm going to say move or copy. So I'm clicking on move or copy. Then I'll check the sheet, which is the sales data here. Check create a copy, then click OK. This is the copy. So I'm going to use this copy to demonstrate how we can use XLOOKUP to correct the missing store IDs. It is currently in a table. I'm going to convert this table to range. So I'll click on table design, right? Notice that I clicked somewhere within the table before clicking on table design. Then under tools, I'll say convert to ranges. So I'll click on this and then click on yes to convert to normal range. So it has converted this to normal range. However, it still has the band colors that makes it look like a table. And if you don't like it this way, you can remove the band color by doing the following things. Say Control A to highlight. Then we go to Home. Under Font, let's remove the fill color, okay? Click the drop down here and say No fill color. Then, still under Font, come and click on No border so that the normal cell grid lines will show up again. So let us just add or insert a new column beside our store ID. I'll be doing that by right-clicking on the next column here and then click on Insert. It will insert a new column. I'll just name this column New Store. I'll just name this new column Store ID Match. So let's impute the following formulas and I'll be explaining the syntax. I'll say equals XLOOKUP, open parentheses. So let's insert the lookup value and the lookup value will be location here. So I'm going to click, hold, and drag to highlight all of the content of our location column. So now, what is the lookup value? The lookup value is a required entry within the XLOOKUP formula. It is the value you want to search for, okay? So we want to search for these locations now. We'll say comma. So we are going to be inserting our lookup array. The next we'll be entering is our lookup array. Our lookup array is another required field within our syntax. And the lookup array is the range or array where you want to search for the lookup value. In simple terms, it is where we have our lookup value. So we have our lookup value in another table, that is our store lookup table. Remember, we created this table to map our correct store IDs, okay? So we are going to highlight this range. You see that our location in our sales data table and the lookup array here matches, okay? So let's continue in the formula bar. We'll say comma, we enter the return array. The return array is the range or array from which to return a result. So we have searched for location. We want to return what? The store ID. Okay, in simple terms, we are searching for location. We want to return a matching store ID. And this is also going to be the store ID range in our store lookup table. So we'll highlight this to enter that. We'll say comma. The next is an optional field to enter in our formula. We could stop our formula here and close parentheses and it will be fine. If it doesn't find a match, it's going to return the NA error. So we want to ensure that it just returns an empty field if it doesn't find a match. So we'll say comma and just open and close quotes so that it returns an empty field. We'll now close our parentheses and then hit enter. As we hit enter, you can see that some of the store IDs have been entered. However, There are some even missing more. In fact, the store ID match column is missing more of store IDs. And you see, it's a problem. The problem here is because some of the names here do not match our store lookup. For instance, let's look at Port Harcourt, okay? You see Port Harcourt. If you come to where we just worked on now, you see that Port Harcourt is spelled differently. Let's look at Lagos. It's a common problem in data entry. You see Lagos here is spelled Lagos. However, in our lookup table, you see that Lagos is spelled correctly. Another error will be from Abuja. Here, some Abuja appeared as ABJ, while others appeared as Abuja. You see where Abuja was spelled correctly, you can see that the store ID matched, okay? What we can do now is to make sure we can correct misspelled values here. And here in our Excel spreadsheet, we can use find and replace to correct this, okay? So let us highlight this. You can say Control H. Control H is a shortcut for find and replace. So we are finding what? Let's start with ABJ, right? Let's replace ABJ with Abuja. Okay. Now, here, if your find and replace doesn't look like mine, you make sure you click on options so that it looks like this. So we want to match the entire cell content so that it doesn't go and replace something else. Okay. If not, it's going to find wherever there is A or B or J to replace, and it will mess up our data. We want to make sure it matches the entire cell content. Okay. All right. So here, you can indicate that you want it to be just within this sheet. You want it to search by columns if you like. Let us go ahead and replace this, and you see. Let's replace all. So you see that all done. We made 7 replacements. You click on OK, then click on close. You find out that we don't have any ABJ again. If you want to really confirm, let us insert a filter here. Click the drop down editing group here and click on filter. So let's select and filter this. You see that we do not have ABJ again. We only have Abuja. So now the next things we have to work on is to normalize Lagos, right? Instead of having Lagos and Lagos, as well as then correct Port Harcourt. We'll do Control H again to get our find and replace. This time we want to look for Lagos, which is the error, right? And replace it with Lagos, okay? Our setting is correct. We want to match entire cell content and every other thing here is correct. So let's replace all. So all done, we made 16 replacements. You click on OK. If you click the drop down, you see that Lagos is gone. So we only have Lagos, okay? Click OK. Now, what we have to work on now or normalize is Port Harcourt. And as you see that, as we correct this, you see that everywhere we correct, the store ID automatically fills up because those formulas have been embedded or inserted correctly. So as we correct the location and it matches with our lookup table, you see that everything matches. So it's time to correct Port Harcourt, okay? So let us copy Port Harcourt, okay, how it's written here, because the reason why we don't have the store ID matching is because the Port Harcourt in our data set here is different from the Port Harcourt in our store lookup, okay? So let us correct that. So let's copy this Port Harcourt and paste it here, okay? And then to replace with the correct Port Harcourt in our store lookup table, so we are going to copy that and paste here as well. What we are going to do now is to make sure that we check match entire cell contents, right? And then say replace all. You see that now all done, we made 25 replacements. And immediately you did that, all of the store ID matched. You can see, right? This was the former store ID we had that had the blank cells. But now you can see that everything has been filled correctly. We do not have empty cells here again, okay? So now you cannot copy these except you copy and paste as values, because if you copy and paste these, you will have the reference errors. We can just insert a new column and copy this entire store ID. Let's say right click and say copy. Then here you can right click again and you paste as values. You can also come to paste special and still paste as values. So you paste as values. Now you can see their values, whereas here they are formulas. All right. So one of our objectives was that we will learn how to use fuzzy matching to handle missing store IDs. Okay. Fuzzy merge lets you match similar but not identical text values. It is useful for cleaning human entered data where spelling and formatting might vary. You remember just some steps backward where we had to go to our location column in our sales with rates table to correct some spellings, right? We use replaced there to match both the location column in our sales with rates table and the location column in our store map lookup table, right? So, but with fuzzy matching, right, we may not necessarily have to do that because fuzzy matching will match similar but not identical text values. Let's see how that works. To make sure we can do that, we came back to our sales data raw table where we had not corrected that, okay, where we had not corrected this Lagos, Takot, and ABJ and Abuja, okay? So let's see how that works. So we are going to load this table. We want to take this table to Power Query, and we'll definitely rename it for the sake of these instructions, okay? So let's take that from table or range and take this now. You see that it picked it and renamed it itself sales data raw 2. So to differentiate itself from the sales data raw table. Now, let us rename this. We'll just say underscore T after. So just for the sake of the class. So I just want to show us how fuzzy matching looks. You remember we still have our store map lookup here, right? So this stays the way it is, right? So here in the location column where we have the different spellings, right? So let us use merge or fuzzy merge and see how this will help us minimize the steps we have to take. After this, what we have to do now is to go to home, right? Under combine, let us merge queries. Okay. So we want to merge this query with store map lookup, and we want to merge our location, right? Our location with this location. So if down here, you will see use fuzzy matching to perform the merge. So let's check that use fuzzy matching to perform the merge. Okay. We definitely on the kind, we are going to pick left outer join, right? Under this join kind. Under the fuzzy matching options, we have similarity threshold, which is optional. We have ignore case, matching by combining text parts, and so on. So these are optional steps, okay? Even with fuzzy matching, you see that it said the selection matches 104 of 110 rows from the first table. So fuzzy matching actually reduces the chance of null, okay? But you see now that the first time we did it, right, you could see that we had 65 of 110, right? 65 matching 110. So that merge wasn't successful. So where we had 110 of 110 was when we went ahead to correct the spellings in our location column in the sales with rates table. So with this now, you see that we just have few errors. And I'll tell you why this is so. Remember, we have more than just spelling. For instance, let's go ahead and click on OK, and we'll see what happens. Let's just pick store ID here, expand, right? Click in here, and let's just pick store ID alone and see. Okay, so we still have some nulls, okay? You can see just about few nulls, okay? And can we check? Let's check to see why that is exactly so. You see, this was the ABJ issue. You see that Lagos, right? Lagos and Lagos match successfully. So that is what fuzzy match does, right? it matches successfully. This because remember we said fuzzy match lets you match similar but not identical text values. So Lagos and Lagos are similar, but if we look at ABJ and Abuja, it's not. ABJ looks like just a word on its own, and Abuja looks like something different. But look at Port Harcourt, right? You see Port Harcourt here, okay? Port Harcourt here and the Port Harcourt in our store lookup table are different, but not so different, not as different as ABJ and Abuja. You see, these will be seen as errors from type, you say typographical error, but ABJ looks like something very different from Abuja. You see, that is where we had the issue. All right, so our sales rates have all what we need. We have our final store ID, we have our sales amount in Naira converted, right? So we have everything that we need here for our analysis to perform our analysis, okay? So let's do a final cleanup in these sales rates. We can identify and remove helper columns, right? Because we do not need those helper columns. Helper columns like missing rate flag, we can right click and click on remove that. Also remove rate to Naira. We don't need that anymore. We can remove that, okay, because we have our sales amount in Naira. You can also remove this currency, okay. Then store ID with space, we don't need that store ID anymore. We can also remove our mapped store ID because we have a final store ID already. We can go ahead and remove that column. So those are our helper columns so that we don't have unnecessary columns during our analysis, okay? So secondly, or after that, what we need to do is to rename final columns for clarity. Good naming is critical to report readability. Remember, good naming is critical to report readability. So now, before we have dates, right? This date column, we had a date column. So we can rename this date column to say transaction date. It makes a whole lot of sense because we have transaction ID. So let us have transaction date. You can rename here by coming to transform and click on rename or double click to rename just as we have been doing, okay? So let's call it transaction date, all right? So we can go ahead and put the space transaction dates because these column names are going to be instrumental to ensure that our analysis or report is readable. Okay, we hit enter and we have corrected that. So customer name here is fine. You can just double click and let's put a space there. It's fine. Product is good. Quantity is good. Unit price is okay. Currency, we are not using that because we already have a standardized currency to Naira. So, you know, we have taken out store ID already, the former store ID. So we can just call this store ID instead of final store ID. All right. So now we have renamed our columns and ensure our columns all have or all are in the appropriate data type. Our store ID, not yet, is still on any. Let's make it text. Okay. Standardized sales is on any. So let's make it whole number. Okay. Our location text, sales representative text. So now let's go on currency transaction ID. Let's make this transaction ID into text. Okay. So now we have, so the importance of naming is because even if your technical audience understands abbreviation, assume your end users don't. So clean names equals clean reports. So let's add an index column for traceability. So adding an index gives you a way to trace back rows, especially when debugging issues or referencing rows order. Let's go to add column, all right? So add column. So we want to add an index column. We will say from 1, and let's call it row ID. Okay, hit enter. let us reorder our columns, right? Because the row ID here wouldn't make sense. It's best to start the table, right? The row ID before the transaction ID, right? There are two ways we can easily do this. You can click, hold, and drag to reorder this way. But if you have columns or tables with many columns, it's going to be difficult to just be dragging around, okay? So to use the simpler method, you highlight the column you want to reorder or move. You go to Transform tab. Then under any column you see move, click a drop down, and you can either move to the beginning or to the end, right? So let us move to the beginning. You see that we have easily just moved our row ID to the beginning of our table where it should be. So you can reorder any column you want to reorder that way, okay? We have now completed a full cleaning cycle. Duplicates have been reviewed and removed. Currencies have been converted and standardized. All missing store IDs are filled through merging. So before we load, we finalized data types, clean up helper columns, and added an index column to ensure traceability. Okay, because clean data isn't just about accuracy, it's about structure. So now let us go ahead and load our clean data set to our workbook. So click on home, click close and load. Let's click on close and load. So we clicked on close and load, which should originally load our sales with rates directly as a table into our worksheet here in Excel. But what happened is that it created connection only. Right click on the query, you can see load to here. Click on load to. Now you see that it only created a connection initially. So if you want to add it to your data model, there is Excel data model here. You click on data model, right? If you also want it to come as a table, right, you can check table and still check add to the data model so that it's part of your data model. That is, say you're working with more than one tables that you need to connect using relationships, okay? Or you need to use Power Pivot to calculate measures and columns, basically transform your analysis or your table further. So we can click OK. When we do click OK, now you see it's loading data. We have been able to solve the connection only issue. So we now have it as a table here. This is our sales with rates table, right, that we had successfully cleaned and will be working with, okay? All right, so now to see our table in Power Pivot, we click on Power Pivot, click on Manage, right? So you remember we also added this table to our data model in Excel. And I said you add to data model in Excel so that you can help with relationships, right? If you have 2 tables, 3 tables, and so on, that is a fact table, dimension tables that you will connect or create relationships, okay? Then you can also, even with this table, further transform your table where you calculate DAX, okay? Data analysis expressions where you calculate measures, right? Okay, so you can enter measures here. You can even add a calculated column, okay? You can add a calculated column as well, okay? So let me give an example of measure here, but I'll refer you to Excel in DAX tutorial to cover up measures, okay? Where you calculate measures, okay? So let's just calculate the total sales measure here. We will enter this measure here. We'll say total sales, okay, equals, we'll say sum, open parentheses. We want to calculate the sum of our standardized sales. Okay, this is our standardized sales column. All right, so double click to enter and then close the parentheses. We have a full explanation on DAX with Power Pivot there in that table. Okay, you'll see the link in the description. So make sure you look at that to inform you on how to calculate these measures, okay? If we hit enter now, you see that we have successfully calculated our total sales measure, all right? So let's just close this data model and we'll close these queries and connections so that we have access to, click enable here, so that we have access to our cleaned data where we have the row ID, transaction ID, the date, and so on and so forth. Let us do this now. Let's look at pivot tables. So to insert a pivot table from your worksheet here, we'll click anywhere within this table, right? This is our sales with rates table, okay? And secondly, before we go into that, I will basically suggest, due to the class, we were loading our queries just to see how it looked, right? But while working, let's go to data and queries and connection. Let me show you something. It is possible that we will not load all of these to our workbook or to our model because we didn't need them or we don't need them. We just use them as use them for merging and so on, just to make sure we can clean our data set or just to make sure we can clean our data. Okay. Let's go to, say, right click here and let's go to edit. So we go to Power Query from there and you see all of the queries, right? This is how you expand to see all the queries. You see all of the queries. So it is not necessary that we load queries that we don't need. We could just work on them and have them here. There will just be connections, okay? There will just be connections. So, but we loaded them just to see how they look. So we can hide these sheets, okay? So let's hide this as well, the currency hide, and hide this. So you see that now we just have two sheets and we just have two visible sheets. This is the original sales data that we cleaned, and this is the cleaned sales data that we have for our analysis, okay? So let's now head back to pivot table analysis. So to enter a pivot table from your worksheet here, you just go to insert and you see pivot table, click on pivot table, right? And because you were clicked somewhere within this table, it just picked the table name, which was sales with rates. Remember, we had to rename this to sales with rates in Power Query, okay? Now, we need to put in a new worksheet because we don't want to put or insert pivot tables within our data set, right? So we have to pick new worksheet, okay? Then click OK. It opens a new worksheet, and then we have our pivot table fields and the areas where we have to drag and drop fields for calculations, okay? When you look at Excel index, you see that we discuss implicit and explicit measures. It will be clear to you, right, when you look at that. Okay, so you can basically, your pivot fields may not look like mine. It may look something like this, which is fine, okay? So what we need to do now is to create a pivot table which helps us quickly summarize and analyze our sales data. We are going to be dragging the date field into the column area. Okay, so we have transaction date, right? Let's put that in column, and you're going to see our transaction dates. Okay, let's pick standardized sales and put it in values. Okay, what happened here was that it already grouped these for us. Okay, it grouped these. Okay, now, in January, this was the sales, February, March, April, right? So you could basically right click on these dates and you want to group by something else. So you group, you see that we have starting at, ending at. Now you see that it grouped by days, month. So you can group by year, okay? You uncheck this, just group by year only. When you group by year, you see the year, right? You can right click and group by something else, okay? So that is how you group by. You can group by, say, quarter. Let's uncheck years and click OK. You can see you have quarter one, quarter two, based on the dates that we have, okay? That is how we do grouping here, okay? So you can also look at these values now. These values are what? Set to sum, right? By default, when you pick a column for calculation here, if it's a numerical column where you have numbers, right? Like whole numbers or decimals, you are going to have sum of, right? If you pick something like names into values or something you have text, you're going to have count by default, okay? So let's click the drop down here now. And we may want to represent our values as percentage, right? Under value setting, let's say show value as, now is no calculation. We can say percentage of grand total and click OK. So we're going to have percentage contribution to our sales, right? From quarter one, you can see there was more sales compared to quarter two, if you want to look at that in percentage. So let's take store location to filters, okay? Here now, all filters are added. So we can click the drop down here and say select multiple. By selecting multiple, it will be easy for us to say we want to know the sales performance in Abuja, for instance, and click OK. This is for Abuja. We want to know the sales performance for Enugu. We check Enugu and say this is for Enugu. We want to see for Kaduna, and we say this is for Kaduna. If you want to see for all of it again, you select all and click OK. So this is for all, okay? So you can basically select more filters as you like to select, okay? Filters allow us to narrow down the data by specific stores, making analysis flexible. So let's insert another pivot table under this pivot table. So we click on insert pivot table and let's pick our sales with rates table, okay? So let's just take this out, click somewhere in that table and say Control A, say sales with rates. So you can just enter the name of the table quickly. We are picking existing worksheet because we are coming from that worksheet, that sheet one, right? So click OK. And now let's insert that. So we want to rank location based on sales, right? So what we are going to do now is to pick total sales or standardized sales, which is our standardized total sales to values. Then we are going to pick location, store location to rows. So we are going to have it this way. Okay. So I'm going to show us in this way how we can also even clone a pivot table. Okay. We want to come to the side of this now and say store location. So store location, then we name this column sales. Then we can say rank here. Let us copy these values here from our pivot table. We just highlight and say Control C, Control V to paste. All right, so here we will use the get pivot data function to copy data from our pivot table here. We'll say equals. We'll click here, you see get pivot data and just hit enter. So let me redo it, just as simple as saying equals. Click on the corresponding Abuja value and hit enter. So we have that value. But the problem now is that we cannot autofill this because it's going to give us the same value across. So let us adjust this formula to make sure that we can pick these as criteria, okay? So look at this now. We say get pivot data, standardized sales equals to, this is where standardized sales is, A8, right? All right. So it now picked store location, and for store location, it had coded it as Abuja. So we want to make sure that we can change this Abuja to make it flexible, okay? Let's make this flexible and say Abuja is here in D9. So we are going to make it as a cell reference rather than a name. So we'll hit enter. When we do hit enter and double click here to autofill, you see that we have corresponding values, because if you check this formula now, it's in D11 and D11 has Kaduna. It is not because we have this side by side. If this was under, it will still be the same thing, okay? All right, it'll still be the same thing. So it's not necessarily because we have them side by side. Let's rank this store location based on the sales, okay? So we are going to say equals to rank. We want to rank this now. We'll rank E9, comma. So we want to enter the reference to rank, which will be all of this range. Okay, so let us make this range an absolute range so that we can easily autofill. So we'll say F4, just press F4 on your keyboard. Click here again and say F4 on your keyboard. So we want to tell it the order to rank. So if we rank 0, it ranks as if the reference were sorted in descending order. If you rank with 1, it ranks in ascending order. So let's use 0 and see. We'll say 0 for descending order, close our parentheses and hit enter. So we have 1. Let's autofill this. Okay. So this is our rank. So now, what this does now, this ranks 1 as the highest rank. Okay. Let's format this to say, let's use a currency. Okay. USD here. And you will see 48 is higher. Then the second is 40. Third is 36. Fourth is 35, 5 is 24. So that is what happens. So, but if you rank this as 1, say in ascending order, it makes the highest get the highest rank. I hope you get the difference. Ranking location by sales help identify top performance and those needing attention. So that is the importance of ranking in business intelligence. Okay. All right, let us conclude this class by building a best practice data dictionary. A data dictionary is a detailed reference that documents every column in your data set. It explains field names, meanings, data types, example values, constraints, and any important notes. This ensures everyone using the data understands it correctly and consistently. So let's look at a step-by-step guide on how to create a data dictionary for our data set. So we'll start by adding a new sheet, renaming that sheet data dictionary. So let's define our table headers. In row 1, let us create the following columns. The first will be field name. The second will be description. The third, data type. The fourth will be example value, constraints or valid values. The next will be notes. Next, data owner or team member in charge. Then the last but not the least is the last updated. The field name here is the exact column name in your data set. The description describes what the field represents. The data type is either text, number, date, decimal. That is the data type of the column. Then the example value is a sample data point to illustrate the typical content of that data. Then the constraint of valid values shows allowed ranges or categories, right? About transformation, assuming the notes here details about transformation assumptions or special handling. The data owner is the person responsible for the data quality or updates. Then the last updated is the date when the data dictionary was last reviewed or changed. So these columns can capture everything needed to fully understand each data set and keep it well maintained. So let's populate our data dictionary, or let's populate our dictionary with our fields. Our first field here in our sales with rate is row ID. So let us go to our data dictionary and enter that. Before that, we can just bold this. So the first column in our data set is row ID. The row ID, what does it mean here is a row identifier, right? So we'll say unique row identifier. The data type there, let's look at it. The data type is whole number. Example value will be, say, 1. Constraints will say unique number or unique, no duplicates. The nodes, we would just say added in Power Query. So instead of just expanding this column, we are going to wrap this. So in our home tab, let's come to this wrap text here. So then we can just expand a little bit, okay? The data owner now can be, say, maybe data team. Let's just have data team across. The last updated could be the updated date. The date you are updating it. So I'll leave that for the date you are updating it. So then the next we have is the transaction ID. The description for a transaction ID here is a unique transaction reference. The data type of our transaction ID is text, okay? Our example value there, you can just pick one example value within the column and we'll paste it here. So the constraint here, we have unique, no duplicates as well. We don't have any duplicate because duplicates were removed, remember. So say unique. Okay, since we have the same thing here, so let's just drag this down to fill up the same thing. Unique, no duplicate. So here we added or remove duplicates in Power Query. So let us wrap this as well. So the data team will be the owner of this. We have successfully filled our data dictionary. Remember what it takes to fill it up. Look at the columns you have and the transformations you've made and record them accordingly. Remember to indicate your last updates. So I will autofill this since it's the same date, okay? But as you autofill, you find out that it's adding days, right? So we don't want that. So click on this and say copy cell. So it's just going to copy the cell, okay? So always update the last updated column when you make changes. Review dictionary regularly, especially after a major data update. Let us format a table. So let's select the entire table range. We'll go to insert and let us insert a table. Okay, so you can see that it wraps our entire selected range. Check my table has headers and click OK. So you have your table like this. You can choose from a range of styles as you like. Click a drop down to find more styles. Okay, so any style you like, you can select from there. Remember to practice along and do well to practice and submit your deliverable. Have a blessed day and a blessed week.